So again, how would you say, I'm from London?
Soy de Londres.
Soy de Londres.
What's the formal word for you in Spanish?
Usted.
Usted.
And what is the word for and?
Y.
Y.
So how would you say, and you?
¿Y usted?
¿Y usted?
How would you say, I'm from London, and you?
Soy de Londres. ¿Y usted?
Soy de Londres. ¿Y usted?
What's the word for where in Spanish?
¿Dónde?
¿Dónde?
How would you say of where or from where in Spanish?
¿De dónde?
¿De dónde?
It is in Spanish. What is it is, the shorter word that means something permanent, a permanent characteristic?
Es.
Es.
How would you say it is romantic?
Es romántico.
Es romántico.
Now that word, as well as meaning it is, also means he is. It also means she is. It also means you are. So how would you say you are romantic?
Es romántico.
Es romántico.
You are perfect.
Es perfecto.
Es perfecto.
So again, what's the word for where in Spanish?
¿Dónde?
¿Dónde?
And how would you say from where or of where?
¿De dónde?
¿De dónde?
And how would you say you are in Spanish? Again, the same word as for it is. How would you say you are?
Es.
Es.
Turn it into a question. Use a rising intonation and say, are you?
Es.
Es.
How would you say, from where are you?
¿De dónde es?
¿De dónde es?
That's how you'd say, where are you from in Spanish. So again, one more time. Where are you from?
¿De dónde es?
¿De dónde es?
Answer, I'm from London. And you?
Soy de Londres. ¿Y usted?
Soy de Londres. ¿Y usted?
Spain in Spanish, Spain is
España.
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 How might someone say, I'm from Spain?
Soy de España.
Soy de España.
Mexico in Spanish is
México.
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 I'm from Mexico.
Soy de México.
Soy de México.
How would you say, I'm from Spain and you?
Soy de España. ¿Y usted?
Soy de España. ¿Y usted?
Reply, I'm from Mexico.
Soy de México.
Soy de México.
What is to do in Spanish, to do?
Hacer.
Hacer.
To turn this into you do, you simply get rid of the R as we have done before. So again, what is to do?
Hacer.
Hacer.
Spelt H-A-C-E-R. Again, the H at the beginning is silent, as it always is in Spanish. And to turn to do into you do, you're simply going to get rid of the R at the end. So, how would you say you do in Spanish?
Hace.
Hace.
How would you turn this into do you do, turning it into a question? You'll simply stick with you do, but raise the intonation at the end. So, do you do?
Hace.
Hace.
What is the word for what in Spanish?
¿Qué?
¿Qué?
So how would you say, what do you do?
¿Qué hace?
¿Qué hace?
Words that end in OR in English are the same in Spanish. Although they're pronounced in a Spanish way, they're written and spelt the same. So what would be the word for doctor in Spanish?
Doctor.
Doctor.
Actor.
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 Pastor.
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 How would you say, I am a doctor?
Soy doctor.
Soy doctor.
Now, hopefully you've chosen soy. This is because when you're asked what it is you do, this is something quite permanent. It's not something that's normally going to change today or tomorrow. But when someone asks you what it is you do, what are you, and you say, I'm a doctor, well, that's quite a permanent thing, or I'm an actor, or whatever it is. So how would you say again, I am an actor? I am actor, literally.
Soy actor.
Soy actor.
Words that end in IST in English, like artist or pianist, become ista in Spanish with an IST at the end. So how would you say, I am an artist? Literally, I am artist.
Soy artista.
Soy artista.
I am pianist.
Soy pianista.
Soy pianista.
How would you say, I'm an artist, and you?
Soy artista. ¿Y usted?
Soy artista. ¿Y usted?
You may remember those words in Spanish that end in ecto. They end in ECT in English, but ECTO in Spanish. So how would you say correct in Spanish?
Correcto.
Correcto.
And perfect?
Perfecto.
Perfecto.
How about architect?
Arquitecto.
Arquitecto.
I'm an architect.
Soy arquitecto.
Soy arquitecto.
Now actually, that word for architect in Spanish is much more specifically for a man than for a woman. I mentioned earlier the A that is common to women. So you have Angela, Roberta, Maria. These are all Latin names. However, of course, they always have their male counterparts. So you have Angelo, Roberto, Mario. These all end in O. And you'll notice that, for instance, architect ends in an O, doesn't it? So again, how would you say, I'm an architect, if you're a man?
Soy arquitecto.
However, if you're a woman, you're going to say it differently. Just in the same way that Roberto for a man is Roberta for a woman, Mario for a man, Maria for a woman, Angelo for a man, Angela for a woman, these same rules will apply with something like architect. So again, one more time, what is architect for a man?
Arquitecto.
But how do you think a woman would say, I am an architect?
Soy arquitecta.
So, there you can hear an A at the end. Let's try that also with doctor, which also follows this rule. How would you say I'm a doctor if you're a man?
Soy doctor.
And if you're a woman, let's add an A onto the end. How would you say that?
Soy doctora.
How do you think you'd say I am a professor if you're a man? It can also be used for teacher. So I'm a professor.
Soy profesor.
Now let's try it for a woman, adding an A to the end again.
Soy profesora.
Now, having an A replace an O, or adding an A onto the end, can be said to be the general rule in Spanish for differentiating male and female professions. There are some exceptions. For instance, the word for artist is
Artista.
Artista.
whether you're a man or a woman. The same goes for pianist. So, how would a woman say, I'm a pianist?
Soy pianista.
And what would a man say?
Soy pianista.
So some do stay the same. However, if you're not certain, I would generally lean towards O for men and A for women. And if you get it wrong, it will still be clear to the Spanish speakers who will simply correct you and feed it back to you how it should be. And they'll say, you're an architect, but they'll give you the correct form back. So it's not something to worry about too much. Let's try another scenario now, in which you introduce yourself to someone. Assume that you're me, and start by saying, I'm Paul, I'm from London.
Soy Paul. Soy de Londres.
Now add, and you?
¿Y usted?
The person you're speaking to says, I'm David, I'm from Mexico. How would he say that?
Soy David. Soy de México.
Ask him what he does. Say, what do you do?
¿Qué hace?
He replies, I'm a teacher. How would he say that?
Soy profesor.
Let's try that again now, but this time you're going to be speaking to a woman. Once more, pretend you're me and say, I'm Paul, I'm from London.
Soy Paul, soy de Londres.
And you?
¿Y usted?
The person you're speaking to says, I'm Eva, I'm from Spain.
Soy Eva. Soy de España.
Say to her, what do you do?
¿Qué hace?
She replies, I'm a teacher. How would she say that?
Soy profesora.
So, again, how would you say, where are you from? Literally, of where are you?
¿De dónde es?
¿De dónde es?
Remember that we'll be using S here because where you are from is something permanent. It's a permanent characteristic that doesn't change. Of course, when you're talking about where you are as opposed to where you're from, you'll use the other word for it is. So again, how would you say I am from London?
Soy de Londres.
Soy de Londres.
I'm from London. And you?
Soy de Londres. ¿Y usted?
Soy de Londres. ¿Y usted?
I'm from Spain.
Soy de España.
Soy de España.
I'm from Mexico.
Soy de México.
Soy de México.
How do you think you'd say I'm from Toronto?
Soy de Toronto.
Soy de Toronto.
How about I'm from Sydney?
Soy de Sydney.
Soy de Sydney.
Los Angeles was, of course, a Spanish city, so the name is Spanish and is the same as Spanish, but it's pronounced slightly differently. Have a try at that. How do you think you'd say I'm from Los Angeles?
Soy de Los Ángeles.
Soy de Los Ángeles.
So again, how would you say where are you from?
¿De dónde es?
¿De dónde es?
Reply, I'm from Los Angeles.
Soy de Los Ángeles.
Soy de Los Ángeles.
How would you say in Spanish, excuse me, where are the toilets?
Perdone, ¿dónde están los servicios?
Perdone, ¿dónde están los servicios?
Excuse me, where is the campsite?
Perdone, ¿dónde está el camping?
Perdone, ¿dónde está el camping?
Excuse me, where's the plaza?
Perdone, ¿dónde está la plaza?
Perdone, ¿dónde está la plaza?
Excuse me, where's the tourist office?
Perdone, ¿dónde está la oficina de turismo?
Perdone, ¿dónde está la oficina de turismo?
Excuse me, where's the station?
Perdone, ¿dónde está la estación?
Perdone, ¿dónde está la estación?
The market. The market in Spanish is
El mercado.
El mercado.
El mercado.
El mercado.
how would you say, excuse me, where's the market?
Perdone, ¿dónde está el mercado?
Perdone, ¿dónde está el mercado?
How would you say, the market is in front of the cathedral?
El mercado está enfrente de la catedral.
El mercado está enfrente de la catedral.
What is to understand in Spanish? To understand, literally, to comprehend.
Comprender.
Comprender.
So it's very similar to comprehend, except it's missing the H in the middle. So one more time, to understand.
Comprender.
Comprender.
To say, I understand, simply get rid of the air sound at the end and put an O in its place. You may have noticed that when we're talking about I something, we're using an O. For instance, what was I want?
Quiero.
Quiero.
And I can.
Puedo.
Puedo.
And I have when you're talking about something you possess.
Tengo.
Tengo.
And so you hear that O on the end when you're talking about I, and you'll find that also with understand. So, To understand is, of course.
comprender,
comprender,
Now, get rid of the air sound at the end and put an O in its place. So how would you say, I understand?
comprendo,
comprendo,
How about, I don't understand?
no comprendo,
no comprendo,
Perhaps someone's given you directions, but you don't understand. So say, I don't understand. Where is the market?
no comprendo. ¿Dónde está el mercado?
no comprendo. ¿Dónde está el mercado?
Try it with something else. I don't understand. Where is the station?
No comprendo. ¿Dónde está la estación?
No comprendo. ¿Dónde está la estación?
Again, what is to visit in Spanish?
Visitar,
Visitar,
To prepare,
preparar,
preparar,
to decorate,
decorar,
decorar,
to reserve,
reservar,
reservar,
to invite,
invitar,
invitar,
to mark,
marcar,
marcar,
to camp,
acampar,
acampar,
to desire,
desear,
desear,
to pay.
pagar,
pagar.
What do you think to repeat would be? Now, you may well have said something like repetar. However, this doesn't end in an AR in Spanish, although it's a good guess. Again, if you're not sure, it's worth having a try and having a guess. You might be able to make yourself understood. However, to repeat is actually
repetir,
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 repetir.
spelled R-E-P-E-T-I-R. How would you say you can repeat?
puede repetir,
Puede repetir.
Now turn it into a question and say, can you repeat?
puede repetir,
Puede repetir.
Now try, can you repeat it by hooking the lo onto the end?
puede repetirlo,
Puede repetirlo.
How would you say, I can't repeat it?
no puedo repetirlo,
No puedo repetirlo.
How would you say later in Spanish?
más tarde,
Más tarde.
Literally, of course, that is more late, more tardy, which is the way you express something in Spanish. As I mentioned earlier, in English we have two ways of describing something as being less or more than something. For instance, we have big and bigger, small and smaller, but we don't say comfortable and comfortabler. We say comfortable and more comfortable, intelligent and more intelligent. These two systems have come to us because we're sort of a hybrid language in English. We have a Germanic part, and from German and in Dutch, even today, they add ER to compare things. But in Latin languages, which we also are influenced by, you add more in order to compare something. So although we say big and bigger in English, in Spanish it would be big and more big. We say late and later in English, but in Spanish it will be late and more late. And this goes for everything, which actually makes it easier for us, because whereas we have two systems, they just have one. Everything is with more. To say slow or slowly in Spanish, you will say
despacio,
Despacio.
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 So, how do you think you would say slower or more slowly in Spanish?
Más despacio.
Más despacio.
And this is what you'll always use in Spanish in order to say something is more than something. There'll be no slower, it'll be more slow or more slowly. So one more time, how would you say later in Spanish?
Más tarde.
Más tarde.
And slower or more slowly?
Más despacio.
Más despacio.
How would you say I can in Spanish? I can.
Puedo.
Puedo.
You can, formal.
Puede.
Puede.
How would you say you can speak?
Puede hablar.
Puede hablar.
You can speak more slowly.
Puede hablar más despacio.
Puede hablar más despacio.
Using a rising intonation, turn it into a question and say, can you speak more slowly?
¿Puede hablar más despacio?
¿Puede hablar más despacio?
Perhaps, however, you're talking to someone you know well. So change the type of word you're using for can to the informal and say, can you speak more slowly?
¿Puedes hablar más despacio?
¿Puedes hablar más despacio?
Do you remember how to say, I'm sorry in Spanish? I'm sorry.
Lo siento.
Lo siento.
You may by now be familiar with the Spanish word for it, which is lo. And you can hear that in I'm sorry, which once more is
Lo siento.
Lo siento.
and the second word, which is
Siento.
Siento.
you'll notice has an O on the end, which again is to do with I in Spanish. You know, I can and I understand, they've all got O on the end. Literally, it means I feel it. So when you're saying I'm sorry, it's like saying I feel it. I really feel what it is I've done. So again, how would you say I'm sorry? Literally, I feel it.
Lo siento.
Lo siento.
How would you say I'm sorry, but?
Lo siento, pero.
Lo siento, pero.
How would you say I'm sorry, but I can't speak more slowly?
Lo siento, pero no puedo hablar más despacio.
Lo siento, pero no puedo hablar más despacio.
Again, what is to leave in Spanish, to leave?
Salir.
Salir.
And what is I have to or I must in Spanish?
Tengo que.
Tengo que.
How would you say I'm sorry, but I have to leave?
Lo siento, pero tengo que salir.
Lo siento, pero tengo que salir.
What's the word for now in Spanish, now?
Ahora.
Ahora.
How would you say I'm sorry, but I must leave now?
Lo siento, pero tengo que salir ahora.
Lo siento, pero tengo que salir ahora.
If that's the case, you might want to say goodbye. Goodbye in Spanish is
Adiós,
Adiós.
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 say goodbye.
Adiós.
Adiós.
Let's try another scenario now, where you meet someone in the street and ask them for directions and have a bit of a chat with them. Start by saying, "Excuse me, where's the market?"
Perdone, ¿dónde está el mercado?
The gentleman you ask replies, but you don't understand. Tell him, say, "I don't understand. Can you repeat that, please? Can you repeat it, please?"
No comprendo. ¿Puede repetirlo, por favor?
Again, you don't understand because he speaks so quickly. Say this time, "Can you speak more slowly, please?"
¿Puede hablar más despacio, por favor?
He tries again, but this time more slowly. He says, "The market is in front of the plaza, over there." How would he say that?
El mercado está enfrente de la plaza, allí.
Say, "Ah, I understand."
Ah, comprendo.
And say thank you.
Gracias.
You're about to leave, but he continues talking to you. He says, "Where are you from?" How would he say that?
¿De dónde es?
You say where you're from. In this example, you say, "I'm from Sydney, and you?"
Soy de Sydney. ¿Y usted?
He replies, "I'm from Madrid. I'm Pablo." How does he say that?
Soy de Madrid. Soy Pablo.
You then tell him your name. Say, "I'm Kylie."
Soy Kylie.
You'd notice how smartly dressed he is and ask him what it is he does. How would you say that?
¿Qué hace?
He says, "I'm an architect. And you?"
Soy arquitecto. ¿Y usted?
You tell him your profession. Say, "I'm a doctor."
Soy doctora.
He looks at his watch and realizes suddenly that he's late for an appointment. He smiles at you and says goodbye. How would he say that?
Adiós.
Say the same back to him.
Adiós.
So again, how would you say "I have prepared" in Spanish?
He preparado.
He preparado.
You have reserved. Formal.
Ha reservado.
Ha reservado.
You, informal, have reserved.
Has reservado.
Has reservado.
You have spoken Spanish. Informal again.
Has hablado español.
Has hablado español.
Have you spoken Spanish?
¿Has hablado español?
¿Has hablado español?
What was the word for English in Spanish?
Inglés.
Inglés.
Have you spoken English?
¿Has hablado inglés?
¿Has hablado inglés?
What is to buy in Spanish?
Comprar.
Comprar.
How would you make that into the past tense and make it into bought?
Comprado.
Comprado.
How would you say you informal have bought?
Has comprado.
Has comprado.
How do you think you'd say you have bought it? Now keep in mind that the past tense have in Spanish likes to steal the pronouns, the proxy nouns, words like it, and put them directly in front of itself. So, you have bought it.
Lo has comprado.
Lo has comprado.
You haven't bought it.
No lo has comprado.
No lo has comprado.
You haven't bought it talking to more than one person.
No lo han comprado.
No lo han comprado.
How about they haven't bought it?
No lo han comprado.
No lo han comprado.
What was we have? We have.
Hemos.
Hemos.
And what is to take in Spanish?
Tomar.
Tomar.
How about taken?
Tomado.
Tomado.
So as we said earlier, when it's ending in AR, you're replacing it with ado. So how would you say we have taken?
Hemos tomado.
Hemos tomado.
We have taken it.
Lo hemos tomado.
Lo hemos tomado.
So again, what is to visit?
Visitar.
Visitar.
And visited?
Visitado.
Visitado.
To prepare.
Preparar.
Preparar.
Prepared.
Preparado.
Preparado.
To reserve.
Reservar.
Reservar.
Reserved.
Reservado.
Reservado.
To invite.
Invitar.
Invitar.
Invited.
Invitado.
Invitado.
To buy.
Comprar.
Comprar.
Bought.
Comprado.
Comprado.
To arrive.
Llegar.
Llegar.
Arrived.
Llegado.
Llegado.
To take.
Tomar.
Tomar.
Taken.
Tomado.
Tomado.
To speak.
Hablar.
Hablar.
Spoken.
Hablado.
Hablado.
So this is the pattern when these words end in AR. Ar becomes ado. However, not all of these words we've been using end in AR. For instance, what was to leave in Spanish? To leave.
Salir.
Salir.
Spelt S-A-L-I-R. How about to come?
Venir.
Venir.
How about to do?
Hacer.
Hacer.
How about to see?
ver,
ver.
Now, these end in a mixture of ER or IR. Let's clump them all together. And what we'll say is that typically, those words that aren't ending in AR, in the past tense, the ones that don't, instead of adding the ADO from bravado, that add the IDO from libido. So again, what was to leave?
salir,
Salir.
Now you're going to replace the IR on the end with the IDO, so what is left?
salido,
Salido.
What was to come?
venir,
Venir.
I have come.
he venido,
He venido.
To eat.
comer,
Comer.
Eaten.
comido,
Comido.
What was to go?
ir,
Ir.
Now replacing it with IDO, what would gone be?
ido,
Ido.
What was to understand, to comprehend?
comprender,
Comprender.
Understood.
comprendido,
Comprendido.
I have understood.
he comprendido,
He comprendido.
I have understood it.
lo he comprendido,
Lo he comprendido.
I haven't understood it.
no lo he comprendido,
No lo he comprendido.
So again, what is to visit in Spanish?
visitar,
Visitar.
To reserve.
reservar,
Reservar.
To pay.
pagar,
Pagar.
To repeat.
repetir,
Repetir.
To desire.
desear,
Desear.
To say you desire, simply cut off the R from the end of to desire. So how would you say you desire?
desea,
Desea.
How would you say what do you desire?
¿qué desea?
¿Qué desea?
What was this evening in Spanish, this evening?
Esta noche,
Esta noche.
The word for tart or cake in Spanish is
tarta,
Tarta.
tarta,
Tarta.
how do you think you'd say this cake, this tart?
esta tarta,
Esta tarta.
And what is I want in Spanish?
quiero,
Quiero.
How would you say I want this tart?
quiero esta tarta,
Quiero esta tarta.
Of course, if you ask for something like that, you might also be asked if you want something else. How would you say, or how would someone say to you, something more?
¿algo más?
¿Algo más?
If you're somewhere like a baker's and you've asked for a cake, you might want something else, like a donut, for instance. A donut in Latin American Spanish is
Una dona, una dona,
how would you say a donut, please?
una dona por favor,
Again, how would someone ask you if you want something more, saying literally something more?
¿algo más?
¿Algo más?
Say, I want a donut.
Quiero una dona,
You may also want something like a baguette. A baguette in Spanish, again in Latin America, is
una baguette, una baguette,
how would you say a baguette, please?
una baguette por favor,
And again, how would someone ask you if you want something more?
¿Algo más?
¿Algo más?
Say, yes, I want a donut and a baguette. What was the word for and before we begin?
Y.
Y.
So, yes, I want a donut and a baguette.
Sí, quiero una dona y una baguette.
As you're perhaps becoming aware, foods, particularly things say at a baker, may all be different between Latin America and in Spain. So, we've just heard the word for a donut in Latin America, which was
Una dona.
and a baguette, which was.
Una baguette.
Let's see what these are like in Castilian Spanish. So, a donut in Spain would be a.
Un donut. Un donut.
So, how would you say in Spain, a donut, please?
Un donut, por favor.
That's not especially different and not so hard to remember. Let's try a baguette in Spanish and see whether that's equally similar.
Una barra de pan. Una barra de pan.
Now that really does sound quite different, but it's not so hard if you break it down. The word for bread in Spanish, bread, is.
Pan. Pan.
And we already know the word for of, which is.
De. De.
Finally, we have left the first part, which is more or less a bar, which is.
Una barra. Una barra.
So try putting that together yourself and saying a baguette, or literally a bar of bread.
Una barra de pan.
A bar of bread, please.
Una barra de pan, por favor.
A baguette and a donut, please, again in Spain.
Una barra de pan y un donut, por favor.
Once more, you may be asked, something more?
¿Algo más?
¿Algo más?
Say no, thank you.
No, gracias.
No, gracias.
And let's compare again those differences between Latin American and Spanish. So, what was a donut in Spain?
Un donut.
But a donut in Latin America, what would that be?
Una dona.
What is a baguette in Spain? Literally a bar of bread.
Una barra de pan.
But in Latin American Spanish, it's perhaps a little more familiar. What would a baguette be there?
Una baguette.
Let's try another scenario now. You're going to go to a baker's somewhere in Latin America. The baker asks you, what do you want? Literally, what do you desire?
¿Qué desea?
Say, this tart, please.
Esta tarta, por favor.
The baker then asks, anything else? Literally, something more?
¿Algo más?
Say, yes. A donut and a baguette, please.
Sí, una dona y una baguette, por favor.
The baker then says, anything else?
¿Algo más?
Say, no thank you.
No, gracias.
He tells you, 8 pesos, please.
8 pesos, por favor.
Let's try this again, but this time you'll be in Spain, so there'll be some changes to the vocabulary you'll use. Once more, the baker asks you what it is you want. How would she ask you that?
¿Qué desea?
Tell her, this tart, please.
Esta tarta, por favor.
The baker then asks you, anything else?
¿Algo más?
Say, yes, a donut and a baguette, please.
Sí, un donut y una barra de pan, por favor.
Again, the baker asks you, anything else?
¿Algo más?
Say, no thank you.
No, gracias.
She says, €8, please.
8 euros, por favor.
Again, how would you say a coffee in Spanish?
Un café.
Un café.
2 coffees.
2 cafés.
2 cafés.
A white wine.
Un vino blanco.
Un vino blanco.
A bottle of white wine.
Una botella de vino blanco.
Una botella de vino blanco.
A bottle of red wine in Spanish would be
Una botella de vino tinto.
Una botella de vino tinto.
If it helps to remember it, think of it as a bottle of tinted wine, more or less. How would you say, a bottle of red wine, please?
Una botella de vino tinto, por favor.
Una botella de vino tinto, por favor.
What is a donut in Spain?
Un donut.
And a donut in Latin America?
Una dona.
How about a baguette in Spain, a bar of bread?
Una barra de pan.
And in Latin America?
Una baguette.
How would you say a sandwich in Spanish?
Un sándwich.
Un sándwich.
As you can see, there are a great many foods that are very similar between English and Spanish, although often there are differences that occur within the language itself. However, I would say there's far more familiarity and similarity than difference. A mango in Spanish, a mango is
Un mango.
Un mango.
Un mango.
Un mango.
So how would you say 2 mangoes?
2 mangos.
2 mangos.
A kilo in Spanish is
Un kilo.
Un kilo.
Un kilo.
Un kilo.
and what was the word for of in Spanish?
De.
De.
How would you say a kilo of mangoes?
Un kilo de mangos.
Un kilo de mangos.
I would like a kilo of mangoes.
Quisiera un kilo de mangos.
Quisiera un kilo de mangos.
So again, here we switched back once more to I would like. Could of course use I want, but it's somewhat less polite. So, what was I have in Spanish? I have meaning possession, I possess something.
Tengo.
Tengo.
He, she, or you formal have.
Tiene.
Tiene.
You informal have.
Tienes.
Tienes.
You, all of you, more than one of you have.
Tienen.
Tienen.
They have.
Tienen.
Tienen.
We have.
Tenemos.
Tenemos.
And again, going back to he, she, and you formal have, what was that?
Tiene.
Tiene.
What is the word for here in Spanish? Here.
Aquí.
Aquí.
In order to say here you go or there you are in Spanish, you'll literally say something a bit like here you have it, except you won't even bother with the it. You'll just say here you have. How would you say that? Here you have.
Aquí tiene.
Aquí tiene.
So, how would you say here you go, literally here you have? Anything else?
Aquí tiene. ¿Algo más?
Aquí tiene. ¿Algo más?
A pear in Spanish, a pear is
Una pera.
Una pera.
Una pera.
Una pera.
how do you think you'd say 2 pears?
Dos peras.
Dos peras.
How about a kilo of pears?
Un kilo de peras.
Un kilo de peras.
Can you guess what a melon would be in Spanish? A melon.
Un melón.
Un melón.
2 melons in Spanish would be
Dos melones.
Dos melones.
Dos melones.
Dos melones.
how would you say 2 melons and a kilo of pears, please?
Dos melones y un kilo de peras, por favor.
Dos melones y un kilo de peras, por favor.
And how would you say I would like a bottle of white wine?
Quisiera una botella de vino blanco.
Quisiera una botella de vino blanco.
And how about I would like a bottle of red wine, literally tinted wine, if you'd like.
Quisiera una botella de vino tinto.
Quisiera una botella de vino tinto.
How would you say, here you go, here you have? Anything more? Anything else?
Aquí tiene. ¿Algo más?
Aquí tiene. ¿Algo más?
Say a kilo of pears and a melon, please.
Un kilo de peras y un melón, por favor.
Un kilo de peras y un melón, por favor.
How about a kilo of mangoes?
Un kilo de mangos.
Un kilo de mangos.
End by asking how much it is.
¿Cuánto es?
¿Cuánto es?
So again, what is you have formal in Spanish?
Tiene.
Tiene.
And how do you make it into a question and say, do you have?
Tiene.
Tiene.
How about, do you have mangoes?
Tiene mangos.
Tiene mangos.
And that can also be used for, do you have any mangoes? With any included. How about, do you have any pears?
Tiene peras.
Tiene peras.
Do you have any melons?
Tiene melones.
Tiene melones.
Let's try another scenario. You're going to go to a market, buy some fruit and some wine. You go to the first stall, and the stallholder asks you, what do you want? What would you like? What do you desire? How would they say that?
¿Qué desea?
¿Qué desea?
Say, do you have any mangoes?
¿Tiene mangos?
¿Tiene mangos?
The stallholder gestures and says, yes, here. How would they say that?
Sí, aquí.
Sí, aquí.
Tell him, say, I would like a kilo of mangoes.
Quisiera un kilo de mangos.
Quisiera un kilo de mangos.
The stallholder says, here you are. Anything else?
Aquí tiene. ¿Algo más?
Aquí tiene. ¿Algo más?
Say, yes, a melon, please.
Sí, un melón, por favor.
Sí, un melón, por favor.
Again, he says, here you are. Anything else?
Aquí tiene. ¿Algo más?
Aquí tiene. ¿Algo más?
Say, yes, 6 pears, please.
Sí. 6 peras, por favor.
Sí, 6 peras, por favor.
Once more, he says, here you are. Anything else?
Aquí tiene. ¿Algo más?
Aquí tiene. ¿Algo más?
Say, no thank you. How much is it?
No, gracias. ¿Cuánto es?
No, gracias. ¿Cuánto es?
He says, 10 euros, please.
10 euros, por favor.
10 euros, por favor.
You then go on to a second stall. The stallholder asks you what you would like. How would they say that?
¿Qué desea?
¿Qué desea?
Say to them, I would like a bottle of red wine and a bottle of white wine.
Quisiera una botella de vino tinto y una botella de vino blanco.
Quisiera una botella de vino tinto y una botella de vino blanco.
The stallholder says, "Here you are. Anything else?"
Aquí tiene. ¿Algo más?
Aquí tiene. ¿Algo más?
Say, "No, thank you. How much is it?"
No, gracias. ¿Cuánto es?
No, gracias. ¿Cuánto es?
14 euros, please.
14 euros, por favor.
14 euros, por favor.
Again, what is I can in Spanish?
Puedo.
Puedo.
How would you say I can understand?
Puedo comprender.
Puedo comprender.
I can understand it.
Puedo comprenderlo.
Puedo comprenderlo.
I can't understand it.
No puedo comprenderlo.
No puedo comprenderlo.
What is to buy?
Comprar.
Comprar.
I can buy it.
Puedo comprarlo.
Puedo comprarlo.
Now, if you can buy something, you may also want to know how you would say to sell something. To sell in Spanish is to vend, which is
Vender.
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 spelt V-E-N-D-E-R. But of course the V sounds something like a B really. How would you say, I can sell it?
Puedo venderlo.
Puedo venderlo.
What is the word for today in Spanish?
Hoy.
Hoy.
How would you say, I can sell it today?
Puedo venderlo hoy.
Puedo venderlo hoy.
How about placing emphasis on the I? I can sell it today.
Yo puedo venderlo hoy.
Yo puedo venderlo hoy.
How about he can sell it today, emphasizing he?
Él puede venderlo hoy.
Él puede venderlo hoy.
She can sell it today.
Ella puede venderlo hoy.
Ella puede venderlo hoy.
Again, keeping the emphasis. How would you say, you can see it? Formal.
Usted puede verlo.
Usted puede verlo.
How about you informal can see it?
Tú puedes verlo.
Tú puedes verlo.
And how would you say, you, all of you can see it? Of course, you can't place emphasis yet because I haven't told you the word for it. But how would you say it without emphasis?
Pueden verlo.
Pueden verlo.
Let's go back again for a moment to you, formal, can see it with emphasis.
Usted puede verlo.
Usted puede verlo.
Now that word for you there gives you the key to find the word for you when you're talking to more than one person. As in English, when you're talking Spanish and you're talking about more than one thing, you'll often add an S to the end. So, a donut, but 2 donuts. In Spanish, this actually also happens to the word for you. So, again, what's the word for you, the formal word for you?
Usted.
Usted.
Now, adding an S straight on would make it a little bit difficult to say, so they actually add an ES, but it's the same idea, making it more than one. So how would you say that? You, meaning more than one of you.
Ustedes.
Ustedes.
So, with emphasis now on you, all of you, the lot of you, how would you say, you can see it, you can all see it?
Ustedes pueden verlo.
Ustedes pueden verlo.
Again, what is to see it in Spanish?
Verlo.
Verlo.
How would you say to see me?
Verme.
Verme.
You can all see me, with emphasis.
Ustedes pueden verme.
Ustedes pueden verme.
So let's go through all of them. What is the word for I in Spanish?
Yo.
Yo.
He,
Él.
Él.
she,
Ella.
Ella.
you, formal,
Usted.
Usted.
you, informal,
Tú.
you, when there's more than one of you.
Ustedes.
Ustedes.
It's worth noting once again that these words are normally going to be omitted. They're not going to be included when you're speaking Spanish, because in Spanish, normally the context will make it clear who you're speaking about. If you feel it's unclear though, or that you want to emphasize who is doing something, you can include them. Now, going back to can for a moment, how would you say they can speak Spanish?
Pueden hablar español.
Pueden hablar español.
How about they can't speak Spanish?
No pueden hablar español.
No pueden hablar español.
This is the end of CD7.